that pay the living wage of £10 an hour by 2020 and introduce a financial transaction tax, a Robin Hood tax on banks. Introduce a wealth tax of 1 to 2% on people worth £3 million or more to raise £25 billion a year by the end of the Parliament. Salaries above £150,000 a year incur 60% income tax rate. On health, they say they'll reverse what they call creeping privatisation in the NHS and make mental health care a priority. On transport, the Greens pledge to a 10% cut in public transport fares and say they'll renationalise the railways. On housing, the party will cap rents, introduce longer tenancy agreements, provide 500,000 new social homes and scrap the so-called bedroom tax. On education, they would scrap university fees, promote comprehensive schools and bring free schools and academies under the control of local authorities. Well, speaking at her party's Manifesto launch in East London, urging voters to create a peaceful political revolution by backing her party on May the 7th, here's the leader of the Green Party, Natalie Bennett, speaking earlier.
Our manifesto is shaped by a vision of a future Britain and our principles and values that say that no one in the world's sixth richest economy, should fear not being able to put food on the table, not being able to keep a roof over their head. This is a politics that's founded in humanity, in a caring Britain, but also a politics that doesn't deny, as the other parties do, the physical limits of our natural world.
And by the magic of television, the Green Party leader, Natalie Bennett, joins us now. Welcome back.
Great to be here.
You want a top rate of tax of 60 pence in the pound for salaries over 150,000. You say that would raise an extra £2 billion a year. What's your source for that?
Well, that's based on the level of income that people earning more than £150,000 a year. And of course,
but what's the source? Where's the evidence that they would pay another £2 billion?
Well, if they're earning that money, they need to pay the tax. But it's really important to set out why we have that principle and why we've chosen that figure.
I know why you have it. You think it's fair?
Well, because that's 10 times the living wage. Sure. We're calling for organisations, for the top paid person in the organisation not to be paid more than 10 times the lowest paid.
I mean, HMRC, the IFS, they all say it wouldn't raise anything like that. Indeed, it might raise nothing at all. So where do you get your £2 billion figure from?
Well, I think people can look at the 1% of people who are earning more than £150,000 and understand that they need to pay their tax.
No, but you're assuming that all the people who do pay, who do get paid £150,000 will just hand over the money. But they may not. They may take actions that result in you not getting that tax revenue. I mean, you're talking about a 60 pence rate for 150,000. Would you care to tell the viewers what happened when François Hollande introduced a 70% rate, but for incomes that were only above €1 million? What happened then?
Well, I think what we look at focus on Britain, and what you'll also
I think foreign examples. Could you tell us what happened when he did that?
No, I think what we'll talk about is what we're also planning, which is a crackdown on tax avoidance and evasion.
Everybody wants that.
And what we've seen under successive Labour and Tory governments is we've seen a slashing away and almost halving of the number of HMRC staff. That's something we want to restore. We want to bring in an extra 15,000 staff members in HMRC, restore it back. That costs about £1 billion a year. Very conservatively, we're saying that £1 billion of spending on staff will bring in £6 billion in terms of cracking down on tax avoidance and evasion. And we're seeing a real change here.
When Mr Hollande put in a higher rate of tax, but at a much higher level of income than you're planning, A, he got almost no income from it. He got pretty much zero income. And B, there was an exit for the doors of wealthy French people. Indeed, half of them are living in South Kensington now. So why wouldn't that happen this time? Why would these people just sit back? They're the most mobile, the most educated people in the country. Why would they sit back and see 60% of their income go? Why wouldn't they just leave the country?
Well, I think what you're stuck in here is a very Thatcherite idea of people motivated by money. That's how people decide their lives. And actually, even the rich, they have homes, they have families, they have children in school. They like a certain lifestyle. London, speaking as a resident of London, I know it has a great deal to offer in terms of a lifestyle.
In this country in the 60s, when taxes were at these levels and more, do you know what happened in this country?
Well,
The wealthy left. People left. There was a brain drain and a drain of wealthy people. They all went to Geneva and Monaco and America. Don't you know that?
What we were talking about is another era and another time. What we need to do is restructure our economy, and that means, we've been focusing on the top end, but let's also look at the bottom end, which is we want to make the minimum wage a living wage. We say if you work full time, you should earn enough money to live on, and we're setting a target of a minimum wage of £10 an hour by 2020.
How much extra public spending would that mean?
Well, that actually brings you in about £2 billion a year extra to the exchequer, because you're paying less in housing benefit and family tax credit, and of course you're collecting more in national insurance.
But the public sector would be paying more.
That's net. That's a net figure from the Resolution Foundation. So what we need to do is, if you look at the IMF and the World Bank, we have a huge problem with inequality. They say inequality is an economic threat. We have to rebalance this economy. And that means that's why we're talking about 1 million extra public sector jobs, 400,000 of them in the NHS and in social care. We have to provide the essential services we're not providing at the moment.
At the moment, the top 1% of income tax payers, those on the 45%, account for almost 30% of all income tax revenues. If they leave in big numbers, you lose your tax base. Now, let's go on to the next thing you want. Not only are you going to take 60% of their income above 150,000, you're going to have quite a large wealth tax, which you think will raise, you claim 25 billion
by the end of the Parliament.
Could you tell me anywhere in the world that has a wealth tax, and a number of countries do, that raises anything like 24 or 25 billion pounds a year? Anywhere.
There's a couple of things that have changed and that are different about our wealth tax to proposals in other parts of the world. And if you go to the French example, it was written in a way that you can drive a coach and horses through the loopholes. Ours is very simple. It says that if you are worth more than £3 million, you're paying 2% a year of that wealth in tax.
Every year.
And that is a contribution, a recognition of the fact that your wealth comes from society. You stick Bill Gates on a desert island, he doesn't make any money at all. Wealth comes from the infrastructure of society.
Oh, it doesn't come from Mr. Gates's brains and acumen and entrepreneurial zeal. That's got nothing to do with it.
And his staff who were, if we're thinking about a British context, educated in public schools funded by public money.
They're already paying 30% of income tax revenues. They're paying for a big chunk of that. I just want to be careful, get you right on this. You're saying that you can take 60% of people's income away above a certain level and take 25 billion of their wealth every year. That's your plan. Every year you can do that. And they'll stay. They won't act against that. They'll just say, yes, Natalie, have the money. Here it is. We don't care. You seriously think that people wouldn't move in response to these policies?
Well, I think
and that you would lose your tax base altogether?
Well, what we were doing, of course, is taking the tax from rich individuals and the big multinational companies, and we're focused on rich individuals here, but multinational companies are a very important part of this.
You might have more luck with that, because a lot of them aren't paying tax.
Exactly. And they're simply not,
people we're talking
they're
about
simply
who are
not
paying
paying
tax.
their way, those multinational companies. And again, we come back to the point that those rich individuals and multinational companies, they all depend to generate their wealth on roads that all of us who are paying our PAYE tax at, some of us at quite modest levels, people who are, paying into those essential public services. We need to fund those public services, and we all have, rich as well as poor, we have a better society. It's better for the rich if we don't have 800,000 people over the age of 65 who aren't getting their social care needs met.
They may not be here to know about that. Is there any level of tax that you think you could hit where people would leave?
Well, what we've set out in here in the manifesto is what we think is a reasonable rate of tax.
But is there any level, if you went for a top rate of 70%, would people leave then?
Well, what we've done is we've gone for a top rate of tax of 60%.
I know what you've done, but I'm asking you, is there any level you think that would result in people saying, I've had enough of this, I'm off?
We've set what we think is a very reasonable, fair top rate of tax, which applies to people who are earning more than 10 times the living wage.
What have you got against the Grand National?
I think there's been a great deal of misinformation here.
Well, correct us. Are you against or are you for the Grand National?
We're calling for a review of horse and greyhound racing, to look at animal welfare issues, to look at issues around jockey safety, to look at issues like use of the whip and weight. That's a review. That's what we're calling for.
But are you yourself for or against the Grand National?
I don't have time to watch it. I don't have any opinion on the Grand National.
You don't?
I used to ride horses when I was a child.
Ah, did you use the whip?
No, I don't think I ever carried a whip.
Quite right. Do you think you've become a liability for the Greens in this campaign?
I think that the Green Party is having a wonderful campaign. We've
You're
now
not
got
going
more
anywhere in the
than,
polls.
we've now got more than 59,000 members. We're standing in more than 95% of
You're
seats
flatlining
in
in the polls
England
now.
and Wales. We're looking at, in 2010, 1 in 100 people voted Green. The polls are showing 1 in 20 and maybe considerably more of people in England and Wales are planning to vote Green. That's a huge advance, a real sign of the Green surge.
OK, Natalie Bennett, thank you.
Thank you.
Now to Giles, who's out and about in North Yorkshire. Today he's making friends with architectural metalworkers. I call them blacksmiths.
What really works in hard-hitting political campaigns, and this is a hot tip, is carefully hammering out simple bullet points that the electorate can look at, absorb, think about, and thus, from the politician's point of view, transform into votes. Of course, these simple points should link up into a far